Tonight, as the desert cools beneath a sky of fading amber, a quiet stillness settles across the stones of Giza. The air drifts softly, carrying the hush of centuries. The pyramids rest like sleeping giants, their shadows long and gentle upon the sand. We begin not with noise or discovery, but with silence, the kind that lives in places where time has forgotten to move. Beneath the layers of dust and memory, something waits. Not a secret to startle, but a whisper to be heard slowly, patiently. Let your breath match the rhythm of the wind. Let your thoughts fall away, grain by grain, until only the desert remains. Imagine the world before names, before history, when stone and star were one. Somewhere below, in the quiet heart of the earth, stories still breathe. They do not rush to be found. They wait for those willing to listen. So we will listen, gently, without urgency, without expectation. Only the awareness that beneath what we see lies something vast, perhaps not meant to be solved, only felt. Now, close your eyes. The night deepens. The journey begins. The claim that shook the world. In the quiet stretch of early March 2025, a group of researchers released a finding that moved gently through the scientific world, like a ripple in still water. It was not a shout, not a declaration meant to stir excitement, only a quiet statement, almost hesitant, about what they believed they had seen beneath the sands of Giza. Using a technique called synthetic aperture radar, they had scanned the ground below the ancient plateau, letting invisible waves of energy drift through the layers of Earth. What came back was strange. Shapes, depths, echoes that did not belong to nature's random hand. The patterns seemed deliberate. Chambers, long corridors, and deep shafts winding into darkness. Some of the images even hinted at narrow channels that might once have carried water. At the center of this slow discovery was Professor Curado Malanga, a scientist known as much for his curiosity as for the controversy that sometimes followed him. To his eyes, these patterns were not tricks of the radar. They were architecture, the remnants of something vast, ancient, and forgotten, resting beneath one of the most studied landscapes on Earth. He spoke quietly about what the team believed they had found. "We are not claiming proof," he said, "only possibility. A network beneath the plateau, perhaps man-made, perhaps ceremonial. An echo of purpose carved into the bedrock thousands of years ago. Yet, as his words spread, they met a familiar resistance. Archaeology, for all its romance, is a careful science. Its language is slow, its proof demands touch, not just sight. To many scholars, these findings were little more than shadows, shapes that technology had drawn in the sand. Some thought it was beautiful speculation, others feared it would breathe new life into old myths. For centuries, the Giza Plateau has been a canvas for imagination. Beneath its pyramids, people have long whispered of hidden chambers, of secret halls said to contain the wisdom of civilizations lost to time. To the researchers, the data seemed to hint that such stories might not be pure fiction. To others, it was another mirage, a reflection of human longing projected onto the stones of history. Still, something in the discovery lingered. The scans showed alignment and order, the geometry of intention. If the shapes were real, they could not have formed by chance. And if they were not real, then what caused such convincing echoes beneath the ground? The debate grew quiet, not heated. Those who believed spoke softly of patience, of returning with better tools, deeper scans, and peer review. Those who doubted spoke of discipline, reminding that science, like the desert, keeps its secrets until the moment it chooses not to. And so the claims settled into a kind of stillness, not dismissed, not accepted, just resting there like something half-buried. Whether discovery or illusion, it reminded the world that beneath the most familiar places, mystery still sleeps. Beneath the pyramids of Giza, perhaps, something ancient still breathes. Not loudly, not urgently, but quietly enough for only the patient to hear. Into the sand, how technology saw the invisible. There was no dust of excavation this time, no sound of metal striking stone. The work began quietly, not with digging, but with listening. Instead of unearthing, the researchers allowed waves of invisible light to do the seeing for them. Synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, is a patient instrument. It does not disturb what it observes. It sends pulses into the ground, soft and rhythmic, like heartbeats disappearing beneath the sand. Each wave travels downward, brushing past layers of soil and stone until it meets something dense, something shaped, something that chooses to answer. Then from the darkness below, the earth whispers back. The echoes are faint, not words, not sounds, but data. When arranged into images, they begin to resemble outlines. To the untrained eye, they are little more than scattered textures. But to those who study patterns, there is meaning in the symmetry. Beneath the Giza Plateau, the signals began to form deliberate shapes. Straight lines, sharp angles, long corridors traced in silence. It was not chaos, it was structure. The researchers adjusted the frequency, refining their focus layer by layer, until the images became clearer. What appeared before them was beyond what they had expected. 8 immense vertical shafts, round and smooth, descending to unimaginable depths. Their surfaces reflected the radar beams evenly, suggesting something crafted, not fractured. The measurements hinted at a distance downward exceeding 2,000 feet, almost twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. The team worked quietly, their screens glowing pale blue in the dark of their temporary camp. Outside, the desert was motionless, the pyramids rising like frozen waves of stone. Inside, data unfolded in silence, line after line, echo after echo. And in those echoes, the earth began to speak of design. Nature does not make perfect circles. It does not carve walls with matching depth and uniform curvature. Nature, even at its most magnificent, is irregular. But these forms were measured, aligned, intentional. Geometry in Egypt was never decoration. It was belief made visible. It was how the ancients expressed the order of the universe. As they studied the data, the researchers found more than emptiness. The shafts seemed to connect with horizontal passages, as though branching out like roots beneath the sand. Between them, faint voids appeared, rectangular, almost room-like. The earth, once thought silent, now appeared to hold an entire design beneath its surface. Yet the process was as meditative as it was scientific. There was no rush to declare discovery. They knew that the desert plays tricks. Temperature shifts can bend waves, minerals can distort readings. So the researchers moved slowly, repeating each scan, adjusting for interference, letting the desert speak in its own unhurried rhythm. Hours stretched into days. Each night, as the stars appeared above the plateau, they would sit quietly outside their tents. The instruments would hum faintly beside them, collecting echoes from deep below. They spoke little, each lost in the thought that perhaps right under their feet, a forgotten architecture waited, not destroyed, only hidden. There was a humility to the process. Radar could reveal shapes, but not stories. It could map what was buried, but not explain why it was built. Technology could illuminate the outline of mystery, but not its meaning. For that, imagination and patience would still be required. When the researchers compiled the data into three-dimensional models, what emerged was astonishing in its calm precision. 8 shafts, evenly spaced, descending vertically. Around them, subtle curves suggesting ramps or spiral paths. Between them, linear corridors forming a pattern almost too deliberate to be chance. It looked less like nature and more like intention frozen in stone. And yet even in this clarity there was still silence. The desert did not confirm or deny, it simply reflected what the radar asked of it. To those who gazed at the screens that night, the result felt almost philosophical. The Earth had not given up its treasure, it had only allowed a glimpse, a reminder that mystery does not vanish just because we can see its shape. Perhaps that was what technology truly offered here. Not certainty, but awareness. A new way to listen to what has always been there. In the distance, the pyramids stood as they always had, motionless, patient, indifferent to the questions of the living. Above them, the stars shimmered in quiet order, the same order the ancients once sought to imitate in stone. And now, beneath those stones, radar had traced a reflection of that order once again, not in sunlight, but in shadow. Whether these patterns were ruins, illusions, or something in between did not matter that night. What mattered was the knowing that even the most familiar ground still holds unseen dimensions, waiting to be heard in the right frequency of stillness. The desert had not changed. Only the way we looked at it had. The spiral descent. As the researchers continued to study the radar data, new forms began to emerge from the silence beneath the sand. Around the vertical shafts, those long, smooth corridors descending far below the desert floor, there appeared faint curves, delicate spirals that wrapped themselves around the main structures like invisible ribbons. At first, the patterns were difficult to read. They looked like soft echoes or distortions in the radar image. But as the scans became clearer, the shapes began to repeat, consistent and precise, winding gently downward in perfect proportion. Through careful processing, the team reconstructed what these spirals might represent. They were not cracks, not faults, not geological accidents. They formed a pattern too deliberate, too regular. When the data was converted into visual models, what appeared looked unmistakably architectural. Staircases curling gracefully along the walls of the shafts. It was a strange sight, almost poetic. Spiral steps descending in silence, leading deeper and deeper into the earth. The thought carried with it an almost meditative calm. If one were to walk there, torch in hand, the flame would dance softly against the polished walls, light and shadow moving in circles, echoing through stone that had not been touched for millennia. The air would be still and heavy. The only sound would be the faint echo of footsteps and breath, the rhythm of descent into time itself. The spirals suggested intention, not just the act of building, but the purpose of travel. A staircase implies movement, an invitation downward. Someone, long ago, had designed a way to go deep beneath the surface, not by chance, but by choice. What lay at the end of that descent was a question that no data could answer. At the base of 2 of these shafts, the radar revealed open spaces, immense cubic halls, each perfectly square, carved directly into the bedrock. They measured nearly 80 meters across, vast and empty, their symmetry astonishing. The corners were sharp, the edges exact, the proportions precise. It was as if geometry itself had taken form beneath the sand. There were no signs of decoration, no inscriptions, no sculptures, no symbols, nothing to tell a story or declare a name, only the quiet presence of design. Rooms made for function, but a function now forgotten. The researchers reviewing the data spoke quietly among themselves. Could such shapes truly exist, hidden for thousands of years beneath one of the most examined sites on Earth? Or were they seeing echoes, illusions formed by the interplay of signal and stone? They did not rush to answer. The desert, they knew, teaches patience. Still, the uniformity was striking. The shapes were too balanced to dismiss as random noise. The spiral paths, the cubic chambers, all seemed to belong to a larger order, perhaps a system built with deliberate symmetry. Even without proof, the images stirred quiet wonder. If these spaces were real, then they were built by hands that understood both beauty and purpose. The cubes might have served as meeting halls, as temples, as storage for something sacred, or perhaps as pure expressions of mathematical harmony, spaces meant only to embody order in stone. To imagine walking there is to imagine entering a world stripped of ornament and story, a world defined only by proportion and silence. One would feel the cool breath of the deep air, see the faint shimmer of torchlight against smooth walls, and sense the weight of centuries pressing above. And yet, even without evidence of who built them or why, there is something peaceful in the thought. These imagined staircases, these perfect squares, they speak not of chaos or loss, but of intention, of care, of a quiet mind shaping permanence out of stone. Perhaps that is why the idea endures. Whether or not the chambers truly exist, the image of descending into the earth, slowly, gently, step by step, feels like a kind of meditation. A return not to discovery, but to stillness. In the language of archaeology, data is evidence, but in the language of time, it is memory, soft, fragmented, and half-remembered. These spirals, seen only through the reflection of radar waves, may be nothing more than memory written in the ground, traces of something once alive and now asleep. Beneath the desert's quiet skin, the earth continues to hold its patterns. Some are natural, some are not. And perhaps, somewhere within those spirals of stone and shadow, the distinction no longer matters. What remains is the shape of intention, smooth, patient, waiting. Blueprint of a hidden world. As the survey widened, the patterns beneath the Giza Plateau began to grow more complex. What had started as isolated shapes, a few shafts, some corridors, a handful of chambers, slowly unfolded into something broader, something that hinted at intention on a vast scale. Each new scan revealed additional lines and layers, as if the earth itself held a memory of design quietly resting beneath the sand. The radar images showed overlapping levels, corridors that branched and curved, spaces that seemed to rise and fall with quiet logic. None of it appeared chaotic. The arrangement followed a rhythm, measured, balanced, and deliberate. When the researchers compared the coordinates of these subsurface shapes to the monuments above, a subtle harmony began to emerge. The patterns below mirrored the positions of the pyramids, the temples, and even certain causeways that crossed the plateau. It was as though the builders of Giza had created not only what could be seen in sunlight, but also a counterpart hidden in shadow. A second world beneath the first. One visible to the eye, one meant to be felt only through the imagination or through the patient ears of technology thousands of years later. The team grew quiet as they studied the alignment. The deeper they looked, the more consistent it seemed. Some of the underground voids lay directly beneath known temples, others rested beneath the lines connecting the three great pyramids. To the human eye, it appeared almost symmetrical, not identical, but reflective, as though the surface and the substructure were bound by a common geometry. This idea, a twin design, one above, one below, felt both architectural and philosophical. Ancient Egyptian thought often spoke of duality, Day and night, life and death, Upper and Lower Egypt, the realm of gods and the realm of mortals. Perhaps in some quiet way, this pattern had extended into the very design of their monuments. The pyramids, reaching upward into the sky, symbolized ascent, the journey of the soul toward eternity, but perhaps beneath them, descending chambers and corridors symbolized the other half of that journey. The return inward, the descent into the underworld, into the silence of transformation. Two halves of a single movement, rising and sinking, seen and unseen. The researchers began to map the data layer by layer, tracing each line with care. The deeper they looked, the more it resembled a plan, a blueprint of an organized network. Wide corridors linked square chambers. Narrow tunnels wound around the edges, connecting one hall to another. Some appeared to intersect, forming what might have been central junctions or gathering spaces. No inscriptions marked the locations, no ancient text mentioned such a network. If it truly existed, it had escaped history's record completely. And yet the balance of its layout, the repeated geometry, spoke of intention. Nature, the scientists reminded themselves, could create caverns, but not symmetry. It could erode, but not align. To walk through this imagined world, even just through its digital reflection, was to enter a calm, ordered space. There were no grand statues or decorations to distract the eye, only corridors and rooms arranged with the quiet precision of thought made permanent. It was, in its simplicity, beautiful. In ancient Egypt, the builders of the pyramids viewed architecture as a bridge between worlds. Stone was not merely stone, it was language, a way of speaking to eternity. If this network beneath the plateau truly existed, it might have been designed as a continuation of that philosophy, a realm below the realm where the physical and spiritual converged. The researchers discussed many possibilities. Perhaps it had served as a sacred archive, preserving rituals, artifacts, or records of the earliest dynasties. Or perhaps it was a ceremonial labyrinth, where initiates descended into darkness as part of spiritual preparation, a symbolic journey through the earth mirroring the soul's passage through death and rebirth. Others suggested a simpler function, storage chambers, structural cavities, or forgotten quarries. But even the most practical explanations could not erase the sense of design that the scans suggested. Whatever it was, it had been built with awareness of what stood above. The concept of duality lingered in their minds. If the plateau was indeed constructed in two layers, a surface for worship and an underworld for preservation, then Giza itself might have been more than a burial site. It could have been a model of the cosmos as the ancients understood it. Heaven above, the duat below, and humanity living in the fragile line between them. This symmetry, whether real or imagined, carried a quiet grace. It reminded the team that architecture was not just about space, but about meaning, about the human desire to reflect the universe in form and proportion. Even across 4 millennia, that intention could still be felt, like a pulse beneath the earth. No one could yet say what lay within those depths. The images were still only suggestions, not confirmation. But the idea remained, soft, persistent, and strangely peaceful, that the builders of Giza might have shaped the desert itself into a mirror of the heavens. A world above for the living, radiant in sunlight, a world below for the unseen, silent, and eternal. And between them, the sands of time, keeping the balance. The whisper of water. As the researchers continued to analyze the data, a new pattern began to emerge, softer, more delicate, than the solid geometry of chambers and shafts. Hidden among the echoes of stone were lines that seemed to flow rather than stand still. Fine channels, faint yet consistent, appeared to weave through the subterranean shapes, connecting spaces that had seemed separate before. These were not the harsh breaks of fault lines or cracks. They curved, sometimes gently, sometimes with purpose, tracing a path that resembled something fluid. When mapped fully, the lines began to form a network. Slender veins of possibility running through the great body of the plateau. Some led outward, bending toward what had once been the ancient course of the Nile. Others branched inward, touching the bases of the vast cube-shaped chambers, as though bringing them into quiet conversation with one another. The researchers observed that the patterns were too orderly to be accidents. The bends and gradients were consistent, almost as if designed to guide movement, not of people, but of water. What they were seeing might once have been an underground system of channels, perhaps built to carry the lifeblood of Egypt through the foundations of its most sacred site. In ancient Egypt, water was never just practical. It was the beginning of all things. In their creation myths, existence rose from an infinite ocean called Nun, a still expanse of formless potential. From its depths came the first mound of earth, the first light, the first breath of life. To the Egyptians, water was not only survival, it was memory, renewal, and the boundary between worlds. The thought that such water might once have moved beneath the pyramids gave the findings a quiet resonance. It suggested that the builders may have sought to mirror their own cosmology in the earth itself. Above, the monuments reached toward the sun, the realm of the living. Below, water might have flowed in darkness, representing the primeval flood, the return to origin. Together they formed a complete cycle: creation and return, ascent and descent, light and shadow. The radar data hinted at subtle variations in density along the channels, the kind left behind when moisture has passed through rock. If those traces were real, then water had once traveled there, perhaps slowly over centuries, shaping the walls as it moved. It might have gathered in quiet pools near the chambers, cooling the air, reflecting torchlight like stars upon an underground sea. The researchers imagined what it might have felt like to descend those spiraling paths when the channels were still alive. To walk through a silence broken only by the sound of water, a faint trickle echoing against stone, a reminder of the river above and the eternity beyond. Perhaps those who entered the depths did so not to escape the world, but to return to its source. In the beliefs of the ancients, the journey after death was often described as a voyage through water, through lakes and rivers of the underworld, each representing a stage of transformation. The presence of these channels beneath the pyramids might not have been purely functional. They could have formed part of a ceremonial design, a symbolic river for the soul to cross, a meditation on impermanence and renewal. The interplay between architecture and water is one of subtle balance. Stone endures, water moves, one stands, one flows. Yet together they shape the landscape of meaning. Perhaps the builders understood that permanence and change were not opposites but companions, that what is eternal must also move, and what moves must find rest. Some of the channels, when traced in the scans, seemed to lead nowhere. They ended in small cavities or vanished into layers of sediment. But even this seemed intentional, like a metaphor hidden in stone. That not every path is meant to arrive somewhere, and not every journey seeks an end. In time, of course, the channels dried, the Nile shifted, the desert advanced, and what once flowed quietly beneath the pyramids became still. But even in stillness, their form remained, holding the memory of motion. The radar, with its invisible touch, had awakened that memory again, allowing the past to ripple faintly across the present. The researchers did not claim certainty. They spoke only of suggestion, of patterns that invited contemplation rather than conclusion. The desert is generous with mystery, but sparing with answers. Still the image lingered, the thought of water running in silence beneath the stone giants of Giza. It softened the grandeur of the pyramids, reminding that even monuments built for eternity once shared their foundation with something as fragile as a current, as fleeting as a sound. If the pyramids are the language of permanence, then perhaps the water beneath them was the language of time, always moving, always returning, whispering the same story in another form. And maybe, beneath the sands that have long since sealed those channels, the memory of that whisper remain. Not as sound, not as flow, but as stillness. The stillness of water that has become stone, and of stone that still remembers how to move. Engineering or myth? In the long quiet of their study, the researchers began to see how easily the practical and the sacred could blur. What they had found, or thought they had found, was neither entirely science nor entirely story. It rested somewhere between, in that subtle space where human intention often hides. The traces of channels beneath the Giza Plateau could have served many purposes. In the most straightforward sense, they might have been part of a functional system, an ancient network designed to guide water through the stone. Such a system could have cooled the air in the lower passages, supported the stability of the rock, or even carried materials during construction. Water, after all, was a tool as much as a symbol. It lightened the burden of movement, smoothed the path of labor, and brought life to a landscape that was otherwise dry and still. But Egypt was never a civilization that separated the sacred from the useful. Every act of construction carried meaning. Every measurement was an offering to balance. To harness water might have been both a matter of need and of reverence, a dialogue between human hands and divine order. Some of the radar reflections suggested surfaces that were smoother than their surroundings, as though stone had been touched by flow over a long span of time. In some areas, the shapes softened, their edges worn gently, as if polished not by tools, but by the patient passing of liquid. It was impossible to know for certain, yet the idea carried a quiet poetry. The thought of water shaping rock, century by century, until both became part of the same rhythm. If the channels were real, they might have formed a system that served both body and spirit. Function and faith moving together like two currents in the same river. For the workers, the water could have cooled their environment, made survival possible, eased the weight of effort. For the priests or initiates, it might have represented the flow of creation itself, the passage between life and eternity. In the Egyptian understanding of the world, the physical and the metaphysical were mirrors. Every visible act corresponded to an unseen truth. To draw water beneath the pyramids could have been to reflect the waters of Nun, the primordial flood from which the first land had risen. It was not only a feat of engineering, but also an echo of creation, a reminder that all things, even stone, are shaped by what moves beneath them. Perhaps that is why the traces of these channels seem to hold both precision and serenity. They were neither wild nor mechanical, but balanced, intentional without aggression, purposeful without haste. The same mind that could align a pyramid with the stars might also guide the flow of underground streams with the same sense of order. The researchers wondered if the builders had seen water not only as a material, but as a mediator, something that linked heaven and earth, motion and rest, life and what lies beyond it, In such a vision, engineering becomes prayer, and structure becomes silence shaped into form. It is difficult even now to draw a firm line between practicality and devotion. The desert preserves form but not intention. What survives in stone often loses the whisper of why it was made. Yet, when viewed with quiet attention, the design beneath the plateau seems to speak softly of both. Water could have cooled the air. It could have carried blocks or sustained workers, but it might also have been the symbol of a journey, the steady movement of spirit returning to its source. Perhaps the builders saw no distinction at all. To them, to build was to believe. To channel water was to imitate the flow of the cosmos. Every drop, every line, every polished surface was part of a single expression, is it a geometry of faith made tangible. And so across the centuries, the question remains, was it ritual, was it reservoir, or was it something more quiet and complete, an understanding that the practical and the sacred are never truly separate, only reflections of one another, flowing together beneath the same sky. Echoes of the Hall of Records. As the team reviewed their findings, a familiar story began to resurface, one that had long drifted at the edge of history, half dream, half remembrance. It was the legend of the Hall of Records, a name whispered through centuries of speculation, said to describe a library hidden somewhere beneath the sands of Giza. According to the old accounts, this was no ordinary archive. Within its sealed chambers was believed to rest the wisdom of worlds forgotten, the record of a civilization that existed before Egypt, perhaps before history itself. Some called it the memory of Atlantis, others the storehouse of divine knowledge. In every version it was said to contain the writings of those who had once walked with gods, the origins of humankind preserved in stone and shadow. For decades the story had been little more than a curiosity. Scholars regarded it as myth, a creation of mystics seeking meaning in the silence of the pyramids. And yet myths often linger because they hold a shape too persistent to disappear completely. In the early 20th century, the American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce spoke often of this hidden hall. He described it not as imagination, but as prophecy, a chamber that would one day be uncovered near the Great Pyramid, revealing the story of a lost age. His words were poetic rather than scientific, yet they found an audience eager to believe that Egypt still held secrets beyond measure. Time moved on, and archaeology grew more precise. The legend faded quietly into the background, replaced by the steady voice of data and excavation. Until now, the new radar scans, careful, technical, unemotional, had shown vast geometric spaces beneath the plateau, their symmetry remarkable, their purpose unknown. To some observers, this pattern was enough to awaken the old tale once more. The idea of a hidden library no longer sounded entirely impossible. The researchers themselves were cautious. They spoke of shapes, not scrolls, of patterns, not prophecy. Yet even in their restraint, the connection was difficult to ignore. The alignment of the underground forms with the monuments above gave the impression of design, a deliberate correspondence between what was visible and what was concealed. Could these chambers, still sealed and unseen, be the remnants of something more than architecture? Could they be the echo of that mythical archive, the Hall of Records that so many had imagined, not as fantasy but as memory carried through generations? If the underground vaults truly exist, whatever they once contained is likely long gone. Time spares little. Scrolls would have turned to dust, wood to ash, metals to tarnish. But even in emptiness, a space can hold meaning, the form of the hall itself. Its proportion, its silence, may have been the record. In ancient thought, knowledge was not always written. It could be shaped. A structure could be a book, a wall, a sentence, a chamber, a metaphor, perhaps the Hall of Records, if it was ever real, was not a library of words but of geometry, the knowledge of the cosmos translated into form. It is possible, too, that the story endures because it reflects something timeless in us. The wish that the past has not vanished completely, that somewhere beneath our feet a part of human memory still sleeps, waiting to be rediscovered. The scientists knew this well. They did not speak in myths, but even they could not deny the quiet poetry of what they had seen. Beneath the plateau, a pattern waited, mathematical, deliberate, and enduring. Maybe that is all the Hall of Records ever was, a symbol of continuity, a reminder that knowledge like stone can outlast the voices that first shaped it. And in the faint geometry beneath the sands of Giza, that echo still lingers, not as revelation, but as reflection. Not a discovery to be announced, but a whisper to be heard slowly in the stillness between what we know and what we still long to understand. A mirror of stone and shadow. When the final layers of radar data were arranged, what emerged was not chaos but a pattern, a quiet symmetry that seemed to hum beneath the surface of Giza. The pyramids, so familiar in their grandeur above the sand, appeared to have counterparts hidden below. Their peaks pointed to the sky. Their foundations, it seemed, extended into shadow. Together they formed a balance, like two reflections facing each other across the boundary of the earth. To the ancient Egyptians, balance was not simply harmony, it was existence itself. Every force required its opposite. Light and darkness, motion and stillness, life and death. The builders of Giza seem to have carried this belief into the language of stone, shaping the plateau not as a single structure, but as a dual world. What the sun touched above had its quiet twin beneath, unseen yet equal. The radar's silent glimpses made this idea feel almost inevitable. Above, the pyramids rose clean and sharp, their lines meeting in perfect order, a gesture toward the heavens. Below, the tunnels descended with equal precision, spiraling downward into stillness, two halves of the same breath, one exhaled toward the stars, the other drawn into the depths of the earth. Perhaps the builders intended this. Perhaps the plateau was never meant to be only a resting place for kings, but a map of the universe rendered in stone. The Egyptians often spoke of the world as layered, the earth, the sky, and the unseen realm of the Duat, the underworld. It was not a place of punishment but of passage, a landscape through which the soul traveled toward renewal. The symmetry between the pyramids and their possible reflections below might have been an echo of that belief, a bridge between worlds, a reminder that every ascent requires a descent. The more the researchers studied the data, the more this balance seemed to reveal itself. The shafts aligned vertically, the corridors branched like roots beneath the pyramids. The chambers mirrored the surface temples in proportion if not in size. It was as though each monument was both an offering to the sun and a descent into its own shadow. The Egyptians understood the language of opposites. They lived by the rhythm of the Nile, a river that rose and fell, destroyed and renewed. The desert and the floodplain existed side by side, death and fertility interwoven. Their architecture followed the same rhythm, permanence built upon the edge of impermanence. In the cool geometry of the pyramids, the ancient idea of Ma'at, balance, truth, order, found its perfect expression. To imagine the plateau in this way is to see it not as static stone, but as a living diagram. The Great Pyramid, rising toward the light, draws the eye upward to eternity. Beneath it, if the scans are true, the earth opens inward, drawing the mind down toward memory. Above is aspiration, below is reflection. One could not exist without the other. In this vision, Giza becomes more than architecture. It becomes meditation, a physical embodiment of the human condition, caught between the visible and the hidden, the known and the unknown. The builders might have seen themselves in this pattern, part spirit, part matter, suspended between sky and soil. To walk its surface was to live, to descend below was to remember. The researchers could not confirm the full extent of the symmetry, but even the suggestion of it was enough to inspire quiet awe. It spoke of a culture that did not separate science from spirit or engineering from philosophy. The alignment of stone was an act of devotion, as precise as mathematics and as gentle as prayer. Perhaps that is why the pyramids continue to hold such power. They are not only monuments to kings, but mirrors, reflecting the relationship between the earth and the infinite. Their shape is not a ladder to heaven, as is often imagined, but a balance point between opposing worlds. Every block, every angle, every shadow is a statement. What rises must also descend. In the end, the data could say only so much. The rest was silence, the kind that carries weight, the kind that feels like understanding without words. The desert holds both worlds now, the one we can see and the one we can only imagine. The line between them is thin, drawn not in stone, but in meaning. Above, sunlight slides across the limestone faces, bright and indifferent. Below, perhaps, chambers still rest in darkness, untouched, patient. Between them, the wind moves softly, carrying dust, memory, and the unending rhythm of balance. The pyramids, then, are not only monuments of the past, but mirrors of the present. Reminders that everything which reaches for light casts its own shadow, and that every shadow points back toward light. What rises must also return. What is seen must always conceal. And beneath the eternal sky of Giza, both truths remain, quietly reflecting each other, a mirror of stone and shadow, forever balanced in the breath of time. Skeptics speak. Not everyone who heard the announcement shared the same quiet wonder. For some, the news stirred only caution, a reminder that in the search for truth, excitement can sometimes outpace evidence. Among the first to speak was Dr. Zahi Hawass, one of Egypt's most respected Egyptologists and former Minister of Antiquities. His response was measured but firm. He called the claims dangerous fiction, not out of disdain, but out of concern for accuracy. He reminded the public that no official excavation permits had been granted for such a study, no verified data had been released, and that the striking visuals shared online were not photographs or scans, but computer-generated interpretations. Artistic, not archaeological. To him, the story risked blurring the fragile line between scientific discovery and myth. Egypt, he noted, had long been the subject of theories that grew in the shadow of its mysteries. Without rigorous validation, even the most elegant ideas could become distractions from genuine research. Other experts added their own voices of restraint. Specialists in radar imaging and geological mapping expressed doubts about what current technology could truly reveal at such depths. Synthetic aperture radar, though powerful, has its limits. Mapping more than a few dozen meters beneath solid stone with clear precision remains beyond most systems' capabilities. To claim that the scans had identified shafts and chambers 2,000 feet below the surface, with defined shapes and smooth walls, seemed to them technically improbable. They urged patience, not disbelief. The radar images, they explained, might well show anomalies. But anomalies are not yet evidence. Natural voids, density shifts, or even interference patterns could easily mimic architectural forms. What appears geometric in data visualization can sometimes be an illusion, a pattern shaped as much by human expectation as by the landscape itself. In science, as in archaeology, verification is a slow and careful process. Claims must not only be presented, but peer-reviewed, tested, and replicated independently. Without that process, the findings remain possibilities, unproven, intriguing, but incomplete. Even those open to the potential discovery acknowledge the need for transparency. The data, if real, must be shared openly with the global research community. The analysis must withstand scrutiny, the interpretations must be repeatable, and the conclusions must hold against time. The researchers themselves, to their credit, had not declared final proof. Their tone was cautious, their phrasing deliberate. Yet in the age of instant news and vivid imagery, caution often fades beneath curiosity. What began as a quiet academic exploration had swiftly become a matter of fascination across the world. And fascination, as every scholar knows, is both a gift and a danger. The principle remains simple, steady, and timeless. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And so, between excitement and skepticism, the mystery of what lies beneath Giza rests in balance once more, suspended, as it always has been, between the realm of discovery and the realm of dreams. Old mysteries, new tools. Giza has always been a place where silence speaks first. Every generation listens in its own way with new tools and new questions, yet the voice that answers remains the same, quiet, distant, and incomplete. The recent discoveries are not the first to stir curiosity beneath the stones the Plateau has whispered before. In 2017, a group of international researchers known as the Scan Pyramids Project turned their gaze inward rather than downward. Using a technique called muon radiography, they sought to see through the Great Pyramid itself. Not by excavation, but through the invisible passage of cosmic particles. These particles, arriving endlessly from space, pass through solid matter at rates that reveal its density. What they found was a surprise, a vast, hidden void, still sealed within the pyramid, untouched since the time of its creation. The chamber's exact purpose remains unknown. It sits above the grand gallery, high in the heart of the pyramid, where no passage leads. The data shows its presence clearly. A hollow space about 30 meters long. Yet what it once held, or why it was made, continues to elude even the most careful speculation. Was it a structural design, a symbolic chamber, or something more profound? No one can say. The instruments can see, but they cannot interpret. And deeper still, far below the monument's gleaming geometry, lies another space, older, rougher, and far less understood. Beneath the base of the Great Pyramid rests the subterranean chamber, carved directly into the bedrock. Unlike the polished symmetry of the king's and queen's chambers above, this one feels raw, unfinished, almost primitive in its simplicity. Its walls bear the marks of chisels, but no inscriptions, no art, no sign of royal presence. Archaeologists have long wondered why it exists at all. Was it the first attempt at a burial chamber, later abandoned when the design evolved? Or was it something more symbolic? A descent into the earth, meant not for the body, but for the spirit? Its silence resists interpretation. When standing inside it, visitors often remark on a strange sense of stillness, as though the air itself holds its breath. The chamber is empty, yet not vacant. There is an impression, not of habitation, but of purpose. Some have called it a ritual space, others a remnant of an earlier plan. What is certain is that the deeper one looks into the Great Pyramid, the less the answers resemble certainty at all. Each new method, whether cosmic imaging or radar or sound mapping, reveals not final truth, but another layer of mystery. Technology sharpens our sight, but mystery deepens just as quickly, like shadow following light. Giza continues to remind us that discovery is not always revelation. Sometimes it is simply listening more closely to what has always been there. The quiet between the stones, the echo beneath the earth, the patient waiting of history for understanding that never quite arrives. The missing capstone and the ancient inscription. If you look up at the Great Pyramid today, you'll notice that its sharp perfection stops short. The summit is flat, unfinished, as though time itself had taken the last stone away. At some point, the capstone, known to the ancients as the benben, disappeared. The benben was more than an architectural detail. It was a symbol, the first mound of creation, the place where divine light first touched the earth. In myth, it represented the dawn itself, a point of reunion between heaven and earth. Some believed it was gilded, perhaps covered in gold leaf, catching the morning sun so that the pyramid glowed at its tip, a star anchored to the desert. Now it is gone. Was it ever truly placed? Was it lost to time, stripped by looters, or never installed at all, intentionally left open as a gesture to the incompleteness of the human journey? No record tells us. The missing capstone feels less like absence and more like an invitation, a silence at the top of a monument built to speak with eternity. Not far from the Great Pyramid, another mystery rests in stone, a granite stele discovered in the 19th century near the Temple of Isis. The inscription, simple yet astonishing, claims that Pharaoh Khufu, the very builder of the Great Pyramid, did not construct the Sphinx. He merely restored it. If the stele's words are true, then the Sphinx predates Khufu by centuries, perhaps millennia. It would mean that when the builders of the pyramids arrived, the Sphinx was already ancient, a sentinel from an earlier age, carved by hands and minds long forgotten. For many Egyptologists, this interpretation is impossible. The language on the stele is later, likely written to honor Khufu's legacy rather than record literal history. To them, it is a religious text, not a record of restoration, yet the possibility lingers, a soft persistence that refuses to fade. Some geologists have even noted patterns of erosion along the Sphinx's body that resemble the work of water, not wind, as though it once stood through a time when Egypt's climate was wetter, far older than known civilization. These marks, subtle and contested, continue to stir quiet debate. If true, the Sphinx would not just be a monument, it would be a survivor, a relic from a forgotten chapter of human time, older than memory, carrying forward a face carved from an age when myth and history were still one and the same. Most scholars still hold to the traditional timeline. Khafre, not Khufu, ordered its construction. The evidence aligns cleanly enough. Yet even within consensus there remains room for wonder. The desert does not easily give up its truths. It offers only glimpses, partial and shifting, like dunes that move with the wind. The missing capstone above, the cryptic stele below, both speak to absence. Not the absence of proof, but the presence of mystery. In their silence, they remind us that some parts of history may not be solved, only listened to quietly, patiently, beneath the endless breath of sand and time. Science, myth, and wonder. Whether the signals beneath Giza are echoes or architecture, truth or illusion, they remind us of something essential. How much of the world remains unseen? Beneath every layer of stone, beneath even the certainties of science, there are still questions waiting in silence. The earth holds its own language, and sometimes we mistake the quiet of that language for absence. Science, in its patience, asks for proof. It seeks weight, measure, verification. Myth, on the other hand, asks for meaning. It reaches not outward, but inward, toward the human need to understand through story, through symbol, through dream. Between the two lies a narrow bridge, curiosity. It is neither fact nor faith, but the space where both can meet. The calm wonder that asks what if, not to believe blindly, but to see more deeply. The Great Pyramid has endured long enough to watch empires rise and fall, to feel the wind shift from cool floodplain to desert heat. It has seen the hands of explorers and the instruments of science, the prayers of kings and the silence of tourists standing in awe. Yet, after all this time, it remains, unchanged in purpose, unhurried in revelation. Each discovery, whether proven or not, is a reminder that knowledge is not a single destination, but a continuum, a slow unfolding through centuries of thought. What one age calls mystery, another calls measurement. And yet the feeling remains the same, the sense of standing before something older than language, older than certainty. Perhaps that is what the pyramids were always meant to preserve, not just the memory of a civilization, but the experience of wonder itself. They speak through balance and geometry, through the weight of silence. Their messages are not hurried. They are meant to be approached as one approaches dawn, quietly, with respect. Even if the radar images prove to be natural formations, or the alleged chambers dissolve back into noise and sand, the search itself still matters. Discovery is not always about finding. Sometimes it is about listening to the faint possibility that the earth beneath us still has stories left to tell. And if one day careful hands and clear minds do uncover something hidden, a chamber, a passage, a trace of human thought preserved in darkness, then perhaps it will not be a revelation of answers, but of continuity. The reminder that the same curiosity that moved the ancient builders still moves us now. The Great Pyramid has outlasted dynasties, earthquakes, and doubt. It will likely outlast us too. Yet in that endurance lies something gentle, a quiet companionship across time. It waits, not to be solved, but to be understood, each generation coming a little closer, each one leaving behind new questions for the next. And maybe, someday, the sand will shift again. The instruments will hum. The echoes will return clearer. And the earth, for a moment, will speak, not in certainty, but in calm remembrance of what still sleeps beneath its feet. Closing, return to silence. As the final breath of daylight fades across the desert, the sands of Giza begin to move again, slow, soft, and endless. Each grain glows faintly in the twilight before it disappears into shadow. The air cools, the wind quiets. The great plateau exhales as though settling once more into its long, unbroken sleep. Beneath the surface, whether of stone or imagination, the chambers remain, silent, unseen, perhaps untouched since the dawn of kings. Once, water may have whispered through the channels. Once, firelight may have flickered along the carved walls. Footsteps may have echoed, faint and reverent, vanishing into the deep. Now, only time lingers, the patient witness, listening to what no longer speaks. It is strange and beautiful how stillness can hold so much life. The emptiness below the pyramids is not absence, but presence stretched thin. A space where history rests quietly beside myth, neither needing to prove the other wrong. So breathe gently. Let the mind wander for a moment beneath the sand, tracing those imagined corridors where water once shimmered and voices once prayed. Let the weight of the desert remind you how vast silence can be, and how full. Whether the halls beneath Giza are real or only reflections of our longing does not matter as much as the wondering itself. Every question, like every grain of sand, hides another beneath it. Discovery is not an ending but a rhythm, a soft returning to what we have always sought: connection, meaning, awe. Perhaps that is the truest secret of the pyramids, not what they contain, but what they awaken. A memory of stillness, a quiet respect for the mystery that endures patiently beyond the reach of certainty. As night deepens over the plateau, the stars gather, bright, distant, and familiar. The same stars that watched the first stone set, the same that will outlast the last question asked. Their light falls across the pyramids like a gentle touch, turning stone into shadow, and shadow into something almost eternal. In that soft glow, everything slows: the sand, the wind, even thought itself. The world narrows to breath and quiet, to the faint hum of the desert beneath the sky. And there, in that silence, something tender remains. Not revelation, not proof, but peace. So rest now, let the mysteries settle around you like dust over ancient stone. Let the night draw close, patient and kind, for in the end, all that lies beneath the sand, beneath the questions and the wonder, is the same stillness that hums within us, steady, eternal, waiting. Good night.